Welcome everybody. This right here, right now is the joy of being a live stream. Coming to you live from Chainsaw Alley apparently. Apparently someone's decided to start using a chainsaw outside of the window. That's fun. So, folks, very excited to be here with you. Good morning here from Kingston, Ontario. Nice to see you here, Rory. Folks, that begs a terrific question. Where are folks coming from? Where on earth do we find you? Okay, let's get set up here. Very confused. Here we go. Well, this is a mystery and a half. This happened to me yesterday too. Maybe Tomlin has some idea on how this works. I can't see the comments where I'm at on Twitch. They're all hidden. I'm sure there's a button that I just hit that is now missing, but I can't see any comments on my channel or any other channel. Good morning, Jean from Brooklyn, New York. Great to say hello to you again. Just said hello very recently. Hey, Alex Rainleaf, coming from Portland, Oregon. Tomlin, if you're there, let me know if there's a button that I need to hit in order to see the comments. That would be very helpful. Hello from Portland, Oregon. Very nice to see you here. How are folks in Oregon doing as far as the wildfires? I don't know if they're like that far over, if it's cooler or wetter there. I know it's wetter there, but how's everybody doing? I can see the comments another way if I need to. So folks, very nice to be here with you. We're going to be doing a little bit of meditation, and today's a freestyle style, which I've been doing quite a bit lately. It's been pretty fun. But what that means is if you have some thoughts or ideas on what we might do for the meditation itself, let me know. Then we can actually, or what's going on in your practice in particular, or things that are coming up for you, this kind of thing. Then I can dive into those, or I can include those there. Good evening from Karlstad, Sweden, reporting. I'm learning about different power tools from this stream. Now I can be a real man soon. It's funny, I thought for some reason you were saying, or I thought you were going to say something like, I'm learning about different power tools because of, various, I have to do certain tasks right now. And I was like, great, let's talk about how to use tools. People don't know my background is in sculpture, so I'm like, I've built this apartment. I, various sort of handy skills, and I was like excited. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Dealing with urges. I think we've talked about this one, but actually I feel like, Nate, this is one that you brought up before, was craving. So that's great. Dealing with urges. That's a good topic. Dealing with urges. Excellent. Okay. What else? So excited to be here today. Porn, booze, lust. Well, the good news is that every urge that we have is based on the same general set of impulses. Of course, they can take various shapes. Okay, so let's... okay, how do I want to break this down? Okay, dealing with urges. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to use our new system, which is... that tells our tech support team that I'm about to say something that we want to have a time code for. So when we're thinking about dealing with urges, we want to think of it from a few different perspectives. One is just the mechanics of the system craving something. And from that perspective, we can deconstruct craving, and that is a way to make those particular urges break down over time. We want to be pretty respectful of the fact that if we are having an urge, it's often one that is born out of a lot of repetition, so it can take time to break that down. That's one side of it, is just the sheer mechanics of getting impulses to break down. There's various practices that you could use for that. You could use a do-nothing practice. You could use a practice where you're labeling clinging, aversion, unconsciousness, and equanimity. There's a variety of ways that you could do that. You could just try to let go, notice the system wanting to want something, but you can also, in those examples, you can just notice the slightest urge, even the urge that occurs in this moment for the sentence to be completed and for the idea to be pinned up in the sense that at some point the sentence will end and what we're talking about will come to a conclusion and the mind is leaning forward, but there isn't a solution. Like, even that little bit of clinging is something that we can attend to. So those are some of the raw mechanical pieces. We can also look at this from a multiple self perspective, where there are these various parts of ourselves, all of which have wholesome and, important needs that we don't want to deny. And often those impulses to, use substances or use substances or shop compulsively, or any of those compulsive behaviors, are actually trying to meet some fundamental need, but the way that they're expressing that need is through something that is harmful. So partially what we can do is go in there and root around a little bit and try to assess what that need of that particular part is, and then try to meet that need through various actions in life, but also through a connection with a kind awareness, which is something we're cultivating in a multiple self model, because that kind awareness ultimately will deliver a kind of fundamental solution for that part. It brings the care or love or feeling listened to or whatever those things are from the kind awareness to whatever part is feeling overwhelmed or stressed in these ways. And then we could look at it from a purely behavioral perspective and just look at, how could we affect what Shinzen calls the ABCs, the affect, cognition, and behavior. And for that, we're typically going to use some form of a nurture positive practice. So we could, simply attend to breaking down the emotional response to that situation. We could look at specifically the behavior, what's the trigger, habit, reward, and notice, try to change the habit once we receive the trigger, change the habit very quickly so that it gives us the same kind of reward, even though it's not the one that is the difficult one. And then the thinking around it is often, changing the sort of pattern loops, which is recognizing the thinking and then trying to change the sort of habit of thinking related to that. So that's an overall sketch of the different techniques you might use to break down craving. So of those, the question is, which meditation would you like to do right now? If you have one in particular that sounds interesting. Nick says, someone said desire is the root of suffering. There was someone, who was that? Someone said that, I remember hearing that once. Nate says, I get that it's all the same and it's been done over and over, but so are the urges. Exactly. Yeah, this is not something, the novelty is not what we're looking for. We're looking for a way that we can approach it that works for us, that we can, approach and connect with, that is significant and has an effect, the effect that we're looking for. Okay, so folks, before we start the meditation, I'm just going to make something up. Right now we have one request, which is dealing with urges and don't know mind. You want to know that one, don't know mind. Okay, so don't know mind and non-doing are actually linked. There's a close relationship, not only in terms of which religions or which sort of sections of which religions use them, but also structurally, that there's well, I can get into describing the mechanics, but basically we're teaching the system that it doesn't need to do anything. This is the non-doing practice. This is the way I describe a non-doing practice, rather than it being, if I see this is how some people will describe a non-doing practice. They'll say, if you see the intention to control your attention, drop that intention. That's a lot of doing. That is a lot of doing compared to a more traditional non-doing practice. So I emphasize the need. There's no need to do anything. Now, those things might happen. The mind might suddenly try to control attention. It might suddenly focus. It might suddenly not be distracted, but there's no need to do that. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And part of that is there's no need to know or understand your experience at any given point. So, okay, let's play around with this. This will be fun. So folks, we're going to meditate for, you guessed it, 25 minutes. That sounds impossible, says part of the mind. Thank you, Tomlin, for reminding folks that we have a Discord. Of course we have a Discord. So part of the mind says, if you're not familiar or used to this kind of meditation, you're like, 25 minutes? That's ridiculous. I'll do it for 5 and then I'll switch channels and that's blah, blah, blah. Well, this is a progressive meditation and it gets better and better as the minutes go on. We prepare. So any challenges that you're having, the goal is to actually sweep those back into the meditation. So if we're, I'm going to ask folks to stay still and the impulses to move will arise, well, you use the meditation technique we're going to describe, and you're going to feed those back into the situation. So once you can get that momentum, the system will easily slide us through the time period here. So what I'm going to encourage folks to do is find a position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. How we do this is by arranging the body well. So if you'd like to lie down, if you're not sleepy at all, you can lie down to meditate. It's not a problem. But you do want to keep the body still without adjusting or doing these kind of things. I'm going to be giving the instruction for sitting up. So if you're sitting, you're going to sit on a chair or whatever it is so that the knees are lower than the hips. This is very important because this allows the hips to be able to rock forward just slightly, and this allows the lower spine. Which I'm getting mixed up here. It allows the lower spine to curve naturally so that it can balance the upper spine, which curves in the opposite direction, and this allows the spine to just sort of rest. We're trying not to hold ourselves up. We're just trying to allow the muscles to rest naturally. So finding that nice comfortable position, we will begin. Ideally, I won't be coughing in your ear during the meditation, but if it happens, listen. What are you going to do? And we'll begin. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths, and just feeling the body rise and fall. Each time we begin a meditation, we begin with the momentum of all of the previous moments. This is much of what our life is built out of, is riding the momentum of previous moments. This is where impulses, these inner drives come from. They've been going for so long that it's hard to step out of the stream of these impulses. So simply taking a moment to assess what this particular moment is, rather than what we want it to be. Also knowing that the part of us that wants it to be a certain way, if that's different than what it currently is, this is also just nature. It's not a problem. Another form of the momentum of previous moments is the speed of the mind. Like an object that's moving through space at a certain speed, when we slow down a bit, it takes a little while for the mind and the body to slow down as well. So noticing if the mind is bouncing around, pulled towards lots of sensations, little distractions. Or if the mind has used up a lot of energy, it's foggy, sleepy, this kind of thing. And the fact is that this particular moment is one where we don't need to do anything. We don't need to slow down this momentum. We don't need to notice our current experience. Noticing may occur. It's not a problem. We are by no means required to clear our minds or calm our emotions. Sometimes this occurs, sometimes it doesn't. Both of these are nature. There's no need to stop internal impulses. There's no need to stop our system from judging or assessing our current experience. This may happen, it may not. There's no need for us to accept our current experience. Acceptance is something that sometimes comes, sometimes does not. There's no need to pay attention. Or be aware. No need to be someone to achieve something called meditation. No need to do nothing. The only area where we're applying any doing that involves intention is keeping the body relatively still. Allowing the body to breathe naturally, but not adjusting or moving the body, of course, unless we assess that it would be more skillful to. If we feel overwhelmed, or if it feels like it's too much, then of course we simply make an adjustment Again, finding stillness, or if it's still too much, simply pausing the meditation or practicing with the eyes open. In the mass majority of our lives, there's some need, something being asked of us. We're asked to play a certain character or a certain role. We're asked to complete certain tasks. Or be a certain way. Often we ask these things of ourselves. And these things may arise impulses may arise, focus and awareness may arise, distraction may arise. Judgment and assessment may arise. Any of these things may arise and we may notice them or we might not. Various selves or parts may arise. The thing we call me, I. This may arise. Often a self comes with it, a kind of urgency or need. A need to exist or a need to solve a problem, a need for the world to be a certain way. And so it's true that some part of us may need something. We don't need to stop that. We don't need to get rid of some part of the system that is yearning or asking or searching. Needs may arise, but it's not our obligation to fill those needs, to solve that problem. Those needs may arise, and like a container, a vessel left outside, the world has no need to fill that vessel simply because it's open. And we have no need to solve any judgment or assessment, any craving. For some, letting go of any need can be experienced as very relieving. The experience is one of a release of a kind of burden. A system, a body-mind that always wants, always searches. They can go ahead and want and search, but there's no need to resolve that momentum. This can feel like a relief for some. And for some, non-doing or not needing to do can feel frightening, destabilizing. And in this particular practice, there's nothing to do about this. Whatever arises, it has arisen. But again, if at any point we feel overwhelmed or like it's too much, it's very skillful to simply do what is needed. We gain more points for assessing and caring for the body-mind than we do for always pushing through. So if we need to open the eyes or move the body or simply pause the meditation, these are all very skillful choices if overwhelm is arising. And sometimes it's helpful to see that we also have no need to know, to understand. Often a turbulent practice is caused by the mind wanting to get it. So there's no need to understand. And if we found that the mind has been trying this whole time to understand, that's fine. Sometimes recognizing that this was the momentum the mind trying to wrap itself around what to do, how to place or understand this experience. That's fine, the mind can do its dance. And sometimes the mind can feel like it understands, and sometimes the mind simply does not understand. Does not get. So there's no need to get it. The mind is always working so hard to understand, to make sense of. To piece together our world. And in this case, there's no need for any of that, of course. The mind will still do these things. None of them are a problem. They're simply various constellations of nature. It's the nature of the mind. And while this might sound strange, see if it's possible to know the experience of a little light entering the eyes without needing to do anything. Eventually allowing the eyes to rest on a single point. Again, recognizing that often when we begin the slow process of transitioning, in meditation, the system will kick into gear and tell us we need to do all these things. We need to move and adjust. We need to become a person again. We need to grip and hold the reality of our ordinary lives once more. Begin to play this game again. And while this might occur, and it's not a problem if it does, simply knowing the fact that there is no need and in fact the body and mind can move and interact with the world without engaging in this experience of a need to do any of it. And so recognizing this moment, this particular moment, is the great teacher. And it shows us how to bring this practice into every aspect of our life, whether we understand it or not. Okay. So making any adjustments you need to allow the body to be comfortable. So what was that experience like? We beep up, beep up. Yeah, so the main thing we explored here was a non-doing practice. And like I mentioned, this is one facet of dealing with craving and urges and this kind of thing, is that the urges themselves have a kind of momentum. They have a kind of pull. And part of the process of deconstructing those is to teach the system that it doesn't need to do anything. It doesn't need to attend, doesn't need to, follow any of those paths just because they arise. doesn't mean that they need to. Now, of course, there's times when it will, and we have to, deal with that skillfully, but part of this whole process is recognizing that there's no need if we don't want to. So let me know what that experience was like. What happened and what you are like now. And if anyone wants to jump onto our Zoom, let me know, because we're not going to open it unless somebody says they want to jump on, ask a question. But we do have a Zoom where people can ask questions, give reports, this kind of thing. I'm reaching for my water, and I don't have it. All I have here is some hand sanitizer. I'll use that instead to refresh myself. So refreshing. Okay, Jean. Jean would like to jump on Zoom. Excellent. So let me open this up. And anyone else who wants to, just feel free to jump on. Okay, am I signed into the right account? Yes. There's this. Okay, we'll start this up. And let's get all the pieces started here. If my camera freezes, don't worry, we'll fix that. That's not uncommon. Okay. Not uncommon. Just real quick. Okay, awesome. Okay, we have one person in the waiting room, it says. Let me see here. Let me fix this. Okay, Jean, looks like you're here. Let me, let's see here. Let me fix this. Great. Looks like you're here. Oh, pro tip, will you silence the live stream? Yeah, thank you so much. You know the drill. You know how to do this. Okay. Oh, Raquel's making me a water. That's so nice. She heard my complaints. Pro tip, will you silence the live stream? Yeah. Okay. Currently, I can still hear my... Oh, it might be the case. If... you may need headphones or may need to turn it down a little bit. We'll see. Yeah, as long as the live stream's not piping in from the background. Will you do a quick audio test?
I thought I had muted the stream, and but I didn't, so I just did. Is that better?
That's perfect. Okay. Here. There you are. Welcome.
Feedback. When you just said, if you're not sleepy and want to try lying down, try that. And I did, and it was awesome. A lot of times, as I've commented in the past, it's really hard for me not to move around. Mm-hmm. And it made a huge difference for me because I didn't feel as mentally distracted, and I was able to really, I moved a couple times. I made some adjustments, but was mostly still. So thank you for that suggestion.
Awesome. Yeah, and so with posture, basically we're often trying to balance the intensity of whatever momentum we're coming with and, where we're trying to get. So you're welcome to lie down. You're welcome to practice walking, while you're moving, etc. And we want to get good at all of these. But one of the reasons we don't usually encourage people to lie down is because typically when someone comes into an average class, they're sleepy and they've been wiped out the whole day. And their assessment is, no, I'm fully awake, I'm fully jazzed. And then as soon as they're asked to relax a little bit, they just, fall asleep. Yeah. And there was a retreat that Raquel and I taught focused on clinging and aversion. And I was having people know anytime there's clinging or aversion, you just say that this is what's happening and you label clinging and aversion. And there was someone who came into the retreat late. They didn't hear any of the instructions and they just came in the middle of the floor, lied down. They didn't know that we were doing walking meditation. So they just
Well,
lie down in the middle of, like, that we would be doing that next. They just lie down in the middle of the floor, fell asleep, and began immediately to snore loudly. Now, normally, under normal circumstances, I would get them to wake up in some way. But I was like, oh, this is perfect. And so we sat there for the entire, whatever, 30 minutes or 40 minute sit. And this person is just like loudly in this quiet room. And I was like, perfect. And it was, eventually we, by the next sit we asked them to stop. But it was a very good for that purpose, is helping people notice clinging and aversion.
indeed. So I wanted to ask you to comment on something that that you had said at the end of last week's Zoom. And you were just thanking people for joining, and you were saying not everyone wants to do this work. And over like the next 24 to 48 hours, that really was like clanging around in my head. Because I have been recently dealing with someone who doesn't seem to want to do that kind of work. I've recently realized that they're not a good communicator. And I thought when that became apparent that they would sort of be like, oh, I need to change this and fix this. And instead there was a lot of kind of denial, and they wanted to blame me. So I just wanted to know if, as people start meditating and trying to, approach the world with kind awareness, noticing in other people whether they're adverse to doing the same kind of work. I understand why people, might find it difficult. But I've been finding myself judging this person a little bit, and also angry that they've been trying to blame me for things. And I'm just wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, I could, but I just want to make sure. So you're describing that, as you're growing, you're sort of noticing this way of being, because I think that's one of the things that people at first don't necessarily see about meditation, that it's at first a way of, practicing or quieting the mind or exploring our senses, but it starts to be a kind of worldview. It starts to be a kind of way of relating to reality and saying, okay, non-resistance. I'm going to resist the world less. So the practice then it becomes external, and I'm less infuriated by my puppy, barking or something like that, which is, it's funny example for me, but I actually get to, have a new member of our family and watch all of this weird stuff arise around the puppy. It's just very funny where I'm like, the system will get like super angry, and I'm like, that's so weird. It makes no sense, but the system will still do it. So these things are arising, and so there's a situation where there's someone who seems like their values are sort of going in a different direction, and you're sort of wondering, how do you relate that to what's happening in your practice? Is that roughly the case? Is there any clarification there? Because I want to make sure that I'm actually addressing what you're describing.
No, you pretty much got it. In short, this person is very reactive to everything, and I feel like one of the things that I'm learning through meditation is to not be so reactive.
Yeah.
You were just.
Yeah, and so in a way, your question is also a very common and very broad question, which is, how do you deal with people?
Yes.
What's up with people? And usually when we describe, what's up with people, or being annoyed or frustrated or challenged with people, it's because there is a conflict of values of some kind. That's usually the case. So this can be applied very broadly to anyone, whether it's related to how do we apply meditation. Basically, one of the things that's important for us to realize is that there's a sort of paradox where we're trying to internally realign ourselves or change ourselves in order to have a better and more fulfilling life. And at the same time, we also can't control the world. We can't actually affect and control the world. So one of the things that is central is to recognize that really we only have the capacity to affect ourselves, and then from there, it becomes like a big crapshoot. Like what happens outside of this? For me, it's really with my family. It's like I wish certain family members would take on meditation seriously, and then other family members have taken on meditation seriously. It's sort of been surprising. wishing that the relationships could sort of be affected by that. But often we don't necessarily get to choose that, who does and who doesn't. And this is also something that might be in your question somewhere. There's often the case where someone will start to grow, and they'll be in a relationship or in a friendship or in a work situation that is just does not align with what's important to them. It's like this, I'm starting to see very clearly these are the things that are important to me. And then as I do that, I realize this job or this situation is further and further away from what's important to me. So basically, the two main options are to either disengage with the person or job or thing or whatever, like just exit, or try to see if we can bridge the gap. Those are basically the two options. I'm never one to say, end the relationship. I'm almost universally, I'm like, try to work it out, figure out some way to work it out. If it's a romantic relationship, I highly encourage couples therapy. I mean, I encourage couples therapy as early as possible, as early as that it's not weird. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, well, it's, this is a really excellent second date. Have you ever considered, really, like, before there's a problem? Actually, couples therapy is lovely, and for some reason we think of couples therapy very differently than we think of therapy, which is therapy is something that could just be ongoing and you visit and it's just sort of to help you explore and live life better. But couples therapy is like there has to be a terrible problem. In friendships, it's just to have conversations and to say, like, hey, this is where I'm at. Like, these are the needs that I'm sort of discovering about myself. Like, what are your thoughts? And seeing if the other person can meet those needs, because often there's a sense that other people won't be able to meet our needs, so I'm out. Like, I'm just going to step away. I'm going to find people who can meet my needs, when we underestimate the degree to which people can change. Now, a lot of people cannot change, and a lot of the time we've been burned because we've asked people to change and they've said no. Or they've asked people to change, and even worse is they said yes, and then they don't change at all. Like, there's no, absolutely no, like, no change of any kind. So that can lead us to this sort of place where there's a sense of like, I shouldn't ask, or I can't ask, or this kind of thing. But that's often the case, that we actually do have to ask. And then what happens is that there's a rupture. We asked for something that was not expected, and the other person's like, well, what do you mean? And so it can create a kind of rupture in the relationship. But relationships are built out of rupture and repair. Like, that's the fiber of a relationship, is rupture and repair, rupture and repair, rupture and repair. And if you can get past that point of the rupture, then the relationship is stronger than it was before. So a very small example, I was driving Raquel and Raquel's friend to the beach just a few days ago. We were just going to the beach, having some fun. And the friend was expressing some annoying situation that they had, and etc. And they were expressing it at a volume that was like definitely like an outside voice. But they were right behind me, and I'm driving and trying to merge and whatever. And I paused and I said, I know this is going to sound very weird, but could you actually just volume down, because it's actually really intense? And I just decided for fun, or for the relationship, I just wanted to sort of say, like, it's emotionally just really intense for me. And it was a super awkward situation. Raquel said later that I could have said it in less of a intense way, but that's, whatever. But it was awkward, and we had to work through that, and we talked about it, and I'm probably going to check in with them today and say, hey, like, I just want to check in, like, I know there's a little strange, but if we can get through that rupture, the relationship will be stronger and will be closer. And they'll also know that sometimes I might ask for something weird, and that's just sort of what they get in the bargain of being a friend with me, that I have trauma and I'm willing to talk about it. And sometimes that comes in the form of like, can we all be quiet for a minute, yes, or whatever that is. So I don't know if that generally addresses what you're describing, or if there's any part of that that's missing. I realized really sorry to interrupt. I just want to add one more thing, was professionally, a lot of the time it's really important to just assert what we actually need. And there can be, and I find that this is often very gendered, that often men are fully willing to be like, actually, blah, blah, blah. And that in society, there's a pressure for women to be like, okay, like I'll go along to get along kind of thing. And often drawing a boundary and saying, actually, I'm not available for that, or actually, I need someone else to help me with this, or there's no, this is not going to work, is actually a power move. And so there's actually sometimes a degree to which we can, I was talking with this same person actually about how they have moved up the ladder in their organization by saying, no, I can't do that work. Actually, no, I need some time off. And there's sort of this thing of like, and they're saying like, no, actually I want a full-time assistant because this is too much work. And this is then them getting, and then them building a team that now they're responsible for a team. So it's professionally, it's often the case where either it can be very helpful and supportive and life balancing to say, actually, these are my boundaries. And it can often be the case where the employer will say, well, too bad. Like, oh, you need to work less than 80 hours a week? Well, that's tough. Too bad. And we get to assess, like, wait a minute, like, is this the kind of thing that I want to do? Is this the kind of, role that I want to have? Or with a client where they're like, no, they're very, very demanding. Do we say like, oh, actually, this is the kind of thing I want to repeat in my life? And if not, we can then exit that relationship with that client. So I wanted to go through all three of those relationships.
Yeah, that was very, very, very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us here on the stream. And if other questions arise, just let me know.
Will do.
As always. Okay, awesome. So we have some comments here from, one here is from Annie. Hello, Annie. Nice to see you. Annie says, the first time you said we don't need to fulfill or need or meet those needs, it felt freeing. The second time, it stressed me out, and I started thinking, is that really true? I do have needs to fill. Sorry, I'm trying to track this. I do have needs to fill, or else things will fall apart. Need to call my mom back, need to go to work, need to feed the puppy. Will the system just eventually decide that some needs are more important? So a couple things. One is that it gets tricky because we start to use language and we say, well, don't I need to, use the bathroom, or don't I need to eat food? Isn't that a fundamental need? I'm hearing sound. Did my phone just start playing a video? It did. My phone just started playing a video. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Pocket video. So we get into a tricky realm because when we start using any words, this is one of the things that Zen did really well, is they often actually, they'll often not give you any words to fight against because every word is going to be a problem. So when I describe the practices that there's not a need to do anything, for now, the simplest sort of description is to come at it from the perspective of there's no need in the practice at that moment. There's no thing you need to do. You don't at that moment need to call your mom back. You don't at that moment need to, make yourself breakfast or eat food or this kind of thing. And it's teaching the system that actually it can let go of a need, and that is actually a very important thing for the system to learn, that it doesn't actually have to engage in certain things. And we talked also about, this is in the course that we're doing together, about the kind of letting the system manifest on its own and do the things rather than us needing to get in there and intervene. And it's a little bit like it's like the system just overdoes everything. It's just overdone. Everything is done and overdone and redone and etc. But the system is pretty smart. It's like driving a car. This is a good example. For instance, you drive a car. That a lot of the time you don't need to sit there and be like, I'm teaching Raquel how to drive a car, so it's very mechanical. It's like, okay, Raquel often asks, which side is the gas and which side is the brake? Like, it's at that level. And so most of those things I just don't even need to do. I can sort of check out. When I check in on them and I'm like, okay, how's the driving? Oh, it's good. But I can basically check out and sort of have a soft focus here and then can have a conversation or this kind of thing. And the system is trained to already do these things. So often there's no need for me to intervene, but if the situation suddenly seems very important, I can bring a lot of awareness and attention to the driving experience, observing what's happening around me. I can intervene in that moment, but most of the time I don't really need to. I don't have to. So that's part of the premise, is to look at it from that perspective, that I don't have to most of the time, and yet the system, the body-mind, is convinced I have to be on all of the time. A lot of my sleep challenges, when they arise, it's because I'll be asleep or I'll be falling asleep, and all of a sudden the system will go, what about that email, right? And it'll say that there's some sort of need, something is wrong, and pump a hit of adrenaline to like wake me up because something's terribly dangerously wrong. So that is a good example of the system very mechanically telling you that it has a need, even though there's just absolutely no need whatsoever. Which, P.S., I just want to share with folks. Well, I won't get into it now. Maybe I'll if we get into a sleep issue, a sleep episode, we'll talk about that. Using basically what I was going to say, which I won't get into, is using a not this practice to address when the system breaks in with some like flash news. You need to pay attention to this thing. Is like using not this as a technique to break that down. But we won't get into that. So Annie, hopefully that helps answer the question. Let me know if it does not, or if you want to clarify in text or on Zoom. Excellent. Alex Rainleaf says, starting out, I began to feel usual welcome relief of not needing to do anything, but, and this seems like a common theme, but about halfway through, a strong fluttering began in my abdomen and grew to an overwhelm. Okay, and so I also wanted to mention that, and I tried to mention this a few times during the meditation. A non-doing practice can be really overwhelming, especially if people have a background in trauma, which a lot of people do. So it's not like the best practice, and if you don't get this practice, you have nowhere to go, and you should just do this, and so bear down and do it. It's actually, when overwhelm arises, it's very skillful to be like, okay, like the system's overwhelmed. I'm not going to like sort of Zen teacher sit there with a stick and be like, you cannot move, and if you move you're going to get whapped. Like, you want to just be like, okay, making an adjustment, and teach the system that that the part of us that feels trauma can trust us and can just be like, when I speak, I don't have to scream at you. I don't have to become extreme overwhelm. I can actually be like, hey, I'm a little overwhelmed, and the system is willing to say, actually, could you be a little bit quieter right behind me in the car? The system can trust that it doesn't have to get to a screaming intensity in order to get its message across. And that's a very important lesson for the body mind to learn, is that the part of us that has experienced trauma can begin to communicate sooner than later. So Alex Rainleaf goes on to say, I was surprised I had to open my eyes. As I found it overwhelming. Well, that's great. That's a great adjustment. That's an excellent adjustment. I then spent a good deal of time trying to figure out what it was all about. Eventually, I was able to go and simply not understand. Excellent. Yeah, and keep in mind that especially with overwhelm, or especially with developmental trauma or this kind of thing, the what is it about part, we kind of have to drop it to some degree often, because the way Shinzen describes it is trying to assess what caused old emotion is like trying to, pour motor oil, or pour some motor oil out of a container and look at it and figure out which dinosaurs like it's built out of. Like, it's just not, it's just a totally unrealistic task often. So that's one of the things that, psychology is discovering about developmental trauma, is that it's not like the linguistic approach doesn't necessarily work. This is why I've been such a big fan of the such a big fan of the internal family system / multiple self work, because it doesn't require you to have a linguistic relationship. It's a current time body relationship with the material, which is, there's also a parallel here with somatic experiencing. So thank you, Alex. That's great clarity. Nate says, good stuff, man. I've got a call at noon, so peace out. Well, peace out to you. Great to see you. Thank you so much, as always, for joining. And he says, very helpful and appreciated Jean's question. Well, I'm very glad that was helpful and interesting for you and for everyone. So without any further questions or comments or anything like that, folks, what that means is it's time for the birthday cake. It's time for our wish. So my wish for you is right now in this particular moment. It's funny when you start getting into the language of guiding in relationship to non-doing, because you can't say, notice that. It's like even that is like, you're like, no, like too much instruction. So in this particular moment, I'll just speak in the larger sense. In this particular moment, there is no need for us to solve all those problems that we often have running through our heads. The need for us to fix things or get out there and change the world in a way that is going to be beneficial for ourselves and our loved ones. There's no need. And even if we decide that that is something that we want to do, knowing that there's no need can actually make it easier, less of a burden. So recognizing that even with the state of the nations as it is right now, there's no need for us to take action and call friends and family and check in, making sure that they're registered to vote, that they know how to do it. Of course, we can engage in this, and we have a certain, there can be a certain chillness about it. It's not life or death for us in that moment. And in fact, being effective, helping people, helping change lives, helping support those who are in danger imminently, we get incredible energy to do this if we don't burn ourselves out, if we don't turn ourselves into these machines that must act. And if they don't, suffering and torture will occur for ourselves, etc. We get massive amounts of relief from not needing to do anything. So at this moment, there is no need for you to be anyone. Many people joined us today. Annie, Alex Rainleaf, Jean, Nate, Nick, lots of folks here with us. None of you need to be. No one needs to be Nick. No one needs to be Annie. No one needs to be Jean at this moment, even you. So just having that information can be helpful in this particular moment, this particular beautiful moment that isn't asking anything of us. And the part of us that is asking, wanting something to be different, churning and trying to change the world, but that's okay too. It doesn't need to be different. It doesn't have to stop begging or asking for its need to be met. And in this way, the system begins to learn that we can bring this practice into every aspect of our life. So as always, folks, practice well, take care of each other, and have fun. We'll see you very, very soon.